overall, the U.S. economy continues to surge forward despite economists' dire predictions. America's GDP grew to $25 trillion last year. Texas has a bigger economy than Russia, and although California is routinely rebuked by right-wing critics, it has the fourth strongest economy in the world, stronger than Britain's, France's, Canada's, or India's. The United States and its European allies collectively run an economic machine that doubles China's stagnating output. Despite record debt levels, a stubborn case of inflation, and other structural challenges, American capitalism continues to drive and dominate the world economy. Though a fulsome defense of Uncle Sam often requires dialectical thinking, but remember this: even with all of its failings, America has fed and freed more human beings than any other country in history. And despite the blather that cable news hosts spit at you daily, your country is doing pretty damn well. And I think it's fair to say Joe Biden has led that international effort.
Well, he certainly has. I mean, this is something I was also saying during the Trump administration, during the Obama administration, during the Bush administration. I've been saying for quite some time, not on the foreign policy side, because I will say on the foreign policy side, Joe Biden has done extraordinarily well. Afghanistan, the one challenge, which I discuss also in this column, it was done. It was promised by the past three presidents to do the same thing. And 70% of Americans supported Joe Biden doing that when he did it. Even 55% of Americans supported him after he did it. The purpose, though, of this column wasn't to talk about Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anybody else. It was to talk about America. John Meacham, as I was going through the 4th of July reading, it was 75% of Americans think we're going in the wrong direction. I could find another poll, though, that says 75% of Americans say their economic standing is good or excellent right now. And there's this bizarre disconnect between perception and reality. I also go down so many things in this column about, for instance, Republicans now have become the new lefties, trashing, college campuses, doing everything but taking over, presidents' offices in universities, despite the fact every year our universities and colleges are ranked the best in the world, and the most powerful people in the world desperately try to get their children into our universities. The smartest kids on the planet come to our universities, and yet they're constantly trashed as woke and weak. And we hear all of this, John, and there's just a massive disconnect. The fact is the United States is the most powerful, most productive, most successful country on the planet. And yet we never hear that from our politicians year in and year out.
You see that segment right there is exactly why I say the United States is the most propagandized country in the world. You have a millionaire that is funded by billionaires, telling workers that the pain and suffering that you feel, victims of state violence, that the crimes committed against them is not a big deal. Now, if you have to even write this article, you are full of shit. If you have to wag your finger and tell people, you're doing great, shut the fuck up, stop complaining, then that means your premise is full of shit. Your premise is full of shit. And now, we thought Democrats was cringe before. Wait until the election comes. Because you know why this article was written, right? Mm-hmm. The election's around the corner. And the ruling party is, and this goes to Trump as well. Go for Barack Obama. Go for Joe Biden, go for George W. Bush. When you're the ruling party power, your job is to ignore the pain and suffering and pretend everything's okay. And that's what we're gonna see the Democrats do and double down on. You have AOC, whose biggest criticism of Joe Biden, CJ. You want to know what AOC's biggest criticism of Joe Biden is? I don't know if you saw that clip of her endorsing Joe Biden on.
Yes, I have.
Her biggest criticism of Joe Biden is that he doesn't support the filibuster. That's her left.
That's all she can muster up. That's all she can muster up and say, which is pretty disturbing. But it just shows her full acceptance as an establishment character, because this is absolutely ridiculous. But back to the point of the video, Nick, because I wanted to bring this up. You were kind of alluded to this, but back to the video. It is election time. They did this for the midterms too. All of a sudden, the IRA is a great climate bill. All of a sudden, Joe Biden is doing this, and it's like none of these things are when the PR arm of the ruling class, which is the media, when they start saying messaging, that just literally means they're not changing anything tangibly. You just need to flip up your propaganda. And just think about this, Nick. If you won $1 million, you're living good. Do I have to tell you living good? Or aren't you experiencing you're living good? But these people are trying to tell us you're living good. You just don't know you're living good. And that's the experience of the professional managerial class and the ruling class who Joe Scarborough represents.
Yeah, I actually kind of want to get back to that segment as well, because I love how like Mika introduced it. And to your point, Mika mentioned before, and she had a fraudulent slip where she said it's the job of the media to control how you think. You guys remember that?
I remember
the famous quote from Mika, where she accidentally said the quiet part aloud. She said, "It's our job to control how people think." So you want to know what the message that Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough want to send to people, to working class people who are struggling? Quit your whining. America's doing damn well. So it'd be one thing if you are delusional, like Joe Scarborough, and you just have this take, but that's not what this article is. That's not what this segment is. This segment is saying, shut the fuck up, stop complaining. Things are great. Shut the fuck up, stop complaining. You're doing well. What do you want to do? Help Trump by saying that you're struggling? Now, I want
so ridiculous.
I kind of want to get back to the video segment, because I remember when she introduced it, she was like, "This is a great article. I loved it." Of course, you loved it, Mika.
You wanted me to bring this back up? Is that what you mean?
We'll bring it up. But you guys see the Twitter here, the tweet, absolutely ratioed to death. Ratioed to absolute utter oblivion. Because when you are this out of touch, when you're this tone deaf, when you this much of a state propagandist like Joe Scarborough, you unite everybody. Like, there are people in the right that is attacking this tweet for, and some of them have replies I find kind of cringe, but they're destroying this guy. And then there are a lot of people on the left, like friends I know here, that you're gonna see in most of my replies here. That's crushing them. I'm gonna show you a few headlines, and then we get back to the video segment. And I kind of want to let it play, because I think it speaks for itself, CJ. Then we can comment afterwards if you want.
Absolutely.
Here's a few headlines. This is Spit and Venom's a mutual of mine on Twitter. In response to this garbage article, which is alone refutes it. I want to watch the video, because it also shows that this is also Joe Scarborough is a master propagandist. Like, there's multiple reasons why he's writing this article. This is also a Western chauvinist foreign policy propaganda piece as well. Because you notice in that piece, they talk about, we the best in the world did, China having a struggle, Russia having a struggle, the U.S. is on top, everything's going great, Biden united NATO. So on face, it looks like he's just wagging at poor people, but it serves so many functions. One of them is propping up Western regimes as well. Another purpose that this article has is to teach the shitty propagandists how they're supposed to speak. Like, I'm talking about what's that? I'm blanking on that YouTuber.
David Pakman?
David Pakman. You knew exactly what I was talking about. You know I blinked on his name, but you knew exactly what I was talking about. There are amateur show propagandists. Like, when you look at Pakman, he's a fucking amateur. Everyone sees through him. Now, people see through Joe Scarborough, but Joe Scarborough have a top target audience that this shit works spectacularly for. So when he write this article, he like, guys, he whipping the troop in order. Guys, this should be our messaging heading in 2024. Get on board, or you're going to be left behind. What do I mean by left behind? Well, the media don't have to like quiz these people on how good they are at providing establishment narratives. But Joe Scarborough makes a round. I did the math. I punched it in the books, because everyone was posting in his salary after he posted this. Joe Scarborough is like Rachel Maddow territory, guys. You know that? Rachel, he makes around $50,000. Well, he made $500,000 a month. No, yeah, $500,000 a month, $500,000 a month. So he's making around $40,000 an episode, right? My math that shitty. Yeah, like he's making around 40,
Something like
50 grand an episode, around the amount that Rachel Maddow is making. And he make that money because he's good at affirming establishing narratives. So that what this article is also about. But this is like this headline destroy his talking point. More Americans are struggling to pay the bills. Who is suffering the most? And there are also stories of Americans 3 out of 4 living paycheck to paycheck. Here I'll read a few more. Private bankruptcy filings are blowing past their COVID-era peaks as credit stress builds for small businesses. A few more eviction filings are up 50%. Bro, me and CJ had to move, right? JB, exactly. we had 3 fundraisers for housing this year. JB, we had to do fundraiser for JB. But Joe Scarborough telling y'all to stop whining, right? Eviction filings. I had a brother that lived with me before I moved who was evicted. These are things that ordinary working class people struggle through. Now, even if you're not evicted, you know someone who is. Like I provide housing for 2 other people who otherwise would have been homeless if it wasn't for this. So yeah, evictions are up. 70% of Americans are feeling financially stressed. But in this segment, the video segment, we can go back to it. Actually, we can go back to it. You see, Joe Scarborough cherry picks one confusing ass poll. We said up to 70% of Americans said, yeah, we're financially okay. Imagine the Weasley fucking way you have to ask that question to get Americans to say that, because that's what polling all is. This way you ask a question, a way to get an answer you want. And after trying so many different ways, like how many polls you see when Americans say they're struggling? After answering this question 1,000 different times, one pollster found one way to ask the question where people say, I guess I'm doing okay. And they were like, how are you doing financially? They were like, yes, I'm doing okay. Oh, it's 70 Americans. Okay. Yeah, see what he did in the segment there? But see that you can chime in. I've been ranting. You can chime in. I'm gonna get back to the video.
No, to your point, because that was the first thing I was gonna bring up. I was like, what poll is he talking about where 70% of Americans are saying they are financially okay? Because this is how sort of the shifting of austerity happens, is that they cut shit, they do shit or there's inflation, prices, they suppress wages. There's a combination of things to bring economic pain to the working class. They do that, and then they go, basically, are you dead though? Did you die? You know that meme? Did you die? Like, as long as you didn't die, then everything's okay. And that's sort of like the lens they want you to view it as. It's like, there's bigger things. Okay, you're struggling, but there's bigger things like freedom going on in the world, and that's what we have to do. Just suck it up. You get what I'm saying? Like, that's the whole sort of understanding. And to me, all of this comes from slavery. It's the understanding of slavery. It's like you're enslaved. You're raping my wife. You're doing this, and it's. Did you die? Well, thank God you're not dead. And it's the same sort of psychological sort of like just manipulation of a person who is being under distress. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is a segment I saw, and I'm gonna skip past a lot of stuff that we already covered. But there's a lot to say on this segment, so I'm gonna get into it.
Well,
let me say this, Nick.
Go ahead.
I was trying to find, because I saw this whole segment. The entire segment I could have played as an intro.
Yeah.
But I was like, damn, let me see. Let me narrow this down to 3.5 minutes. But I'm glad that you brought up some of this other pieces, especially with this guy. I think is that David Ignatius that the first guy that they were.
Dude, everyone they have on Joe Scarborough is a swamp monster, dude.
That's what I'm saying. He's a top propagandist. He's the type of propagandist that goes on flights with politicians because they're that comfortable that he's gonna toe the establishment line, and that's who this guy is. But go ahead, Nick.
Your intro was a great intro to the madness of this segment, but and we said a lot here, so I'm gonna let a lot of it speaks for itself here. So I'm gonna fast forward some part that we covered already, but I want you guys to see the enthusiasm of Mika when introducing this article that this show is sure is going to be a banger. Like, for one, 0.5% chance that Joe Scarborough wrote this shit. By the way, I'm not even evidence for this, but if you guys think this motherfucker writing these articles, you guys are your goddamn mind. He was just on vacation. Like, they were just on vacation traveling. They have ghostwriters. Somebody wrote this article, and they did a segment to celebrate it. Hey, look, Joe Scarborough did something. He actually wrote something. And then based on their coverage in this segment, it's completely different from the perception that people got in reality after seeing the article, because he's getting racial to death. This article is so garbage that Joe Scarborough was trending on Twitter. And people were just,
what?
I don't know if you saw this. He was
I
trending
didn't see that part. No, I didn't see that part.
Very briefly for maybe like an hour window. I called it. I'm lucky I called it. Where Joe Scarborough trending. Everyone just shit on him for this. It's like everyone. Meanwhile, look at how they present it on this show. Everyone in the political universe hated this article except their fucking studio. Listen to this.
In the Atlantic, it's out just moments ago, and it's on my favorite topic, which is
one of her favorites. Mika, like, I love this shit stuff. We all wag our finger at poor. I'm tired of other shit. This is what I live for, right here. So,
where America stands with the world as the NATO summit starts. And you write this, America is doing just fine. You argue, quote, Uncle Sam deserves a modern day Atticus Finch to argue his case before the American people. And you also write in part, quote, liberals once gained favor among their base by attacking the Pentagon's top brass. But now it is Republican members of Congress who longingly swoon over Russia's manly military while trashing U.S. generals and our men and women in uniform. Those GOP attacks come despite the fact that America's military is more powerful today relative to the rest of the world than at any time since the Second World War.
Can you pause it there? We stopped at the same time.
No, my bad. We had literally the same timing. Go ahead, CJ. I'll pass you first.
No, I was just going to say, you have to listen closely to propaganda and the words and the placement of words. The key word, and one of the key words in that sentence, relatively. That's what they're saying. Relative. So based on the condition that every other country's in, that pretty much the United States have a hand in putting them in that condition, relative to everybody else, this is our most powerful time. Meanwhile, Nick, they're running out of ammunition, and that's why they're doing this cluster munition going on. You get what I'm saying? Like it's like they're saying two different things at the same time. Go ahead. I know you want to chime into it.
And it's funny when establishment people have to acknowledge something that we've been talking about for a while, and they say like it's a bad thing. They're like, you notice how the right are the new liberals? The right is criticizing the military. What is that means the liberals are military bootlickers? So based on your ideology, no one can criticize the military. You see how unhinged and how fascist they are once you unpack it? No one can criticize the military according to you guys. And then what they say, I'm gonna dare say what a lot of people may consider controversial. Our military not shit. Our military not shit. And if you like, Nick, what are you talking about? What war have we won in my lifetime? What war have we won in my dad's lifetime? Don't worry, I'll wait. We haven't won one fucking war. We hadn't accomplished one military objective that we actually had. That was openly spoken, I should say. We lost the war on terror in Afghanistan. We completely destabilized Iraq. We lost the Korean War. We lost the Vietnam War. In what universe did the United States military effective? The U.S. military is not strong. The U.S. military is filled with monsters. The U.S. military don't accomplish their geopolitical agenda. What they do is they go and kill a shit ton of civilians. They kill civilians.
We have to ask then, Nick. We have to ask, what is their criteria for saying that the military is good? Because it's not wins and losses. You get what I'm saying? It's not wins and losses. It's something else. So what is that something? If you're thinking from a capitalist lens, it's getting resources.
Absolutely.
So it's the most successful at going in and stealing resources. And again, we have to understand the perspective of which Morning Joe speaks. It is from the ruling class perspective, and that's the win for them. It is not what we think as a win. It's like, well, obviously it's wins and losses. You know what I'm saying? Like basketball is obviously, let me see a column of wins. Let me see a column of losses. It's like, no. You see LeBron? He makes $100 million a game, whether he wins or lose. You get what I'm saying? And that's sort of how they look at it. Go ahead.
That's a fantastic point. I'm gonna continue the video. That's a great point in on, because that is their goal. When it's seizing assets of a country, that's when capitalism had to look abroad. Late stage capitalism, how capitalism is connected to imperialism. So they are like, when you look at arms profits, we look at the amount of money they made, that's all that matters to them. That's actually a great point. And that's why this Ukraine war for them is a win-win, because they working backwards from their conclusion regarding cluster bombs, and you see this in media, everyone justifying why we had to use, we got to use cluster bombs for this reason. No, the reason they're using cluster bombs because they need to sell more fucking bombs. They don't give a fuck what bombs it is. They want to sell weapons. The United States is a glorified arms dealer, and they're going to work backwards from that conclusion. Anyway, let's continue the video. I can run on that all day, so let's continue.
Unlike in years past, American allies no longer grouse about the U.S. leading from behind or burrowing itself into a self-defeating America first hole.
I promise you, boo-boo. I swear this on my fucking life. The majority of the world population is not looking at the United States to get more involved in other countries. If you poll the majority of the global population, I promise you that their criticism of America is not the fact that they're not doing enough in the world. And that's what she's saying here. What the modern liberal believe is that America should go out in front and be the police of the world, and that's what other countries want. And based on how the United States lost position in globally, lost respect to a lot of allies like India, Brazil, and many others, lost many countries in the global south, what she is saying is clearly not fucking true. Mm-hmm. What she's saying that people want America involved. Absolutely absurd. Anyway, let's continue. This article is a doozy.
Instead, the U.S. is first among equals in a dynamic and expanding NATO alliance that just...
We already played the full clip, so this part I actually need to break down a lot here, because I know this is absurd to us, but this is high-level propaganda here. The United States, everything they're saying, they are not first among equals. The United States runs this shit. And if you don't fall behind regarding what the United States want, you are done. You'll be ruined politically. You'll be ruined financially. And there was a German politician who talked about this. They will ruin your fucking life if you don't support the United States position, if you're a German, French, UK politician, etc., etc. But anyway, let's continue. I'm going to keep my introduction short, but there's so much bullshit to say in this article. We already played a long form and intro, but now we got to do direct response to some of this nonsense.
Just added a new member with more than 800 miles of Russian border, and that has provided a devastating response to Vladimir Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine.
Can you pause it there? Do you see how like top win or goal, however you want to describe it, is having another 800 miles of border where NATO is right at the border of Russia. But then they want to act like they're not a murderous, like, absolutely. Why is that a thing? Why is that a thing? Is if you're offensive, why is that a thing? That's only a thing if you're out to like sort of take over the world. And that's serious. Like if you're out to take over the world. Exactly. And it shows it another, in this same segment towards the end, it shows when the historian talks about, look at that map, because they're in awe at the map of NATO expansion. Like, look how that's magnificent, how they're talking about it. So, but go ahead.
The same way Napoleon used to feel when you look at his maps, right? Yes. Look at his conquest, glorious conquest. You had national security experts, people who are significantly to our right, who pre-Ukraine invasion, they used to get seminar and lectures about the importance of having buffer states like Ukraine, Finland, and Sweden. It serves everybody's best interest to have these buffer states, and the West was all for this. Now the West completely lost their mind, and they want to expand NATO because they need to expand weapon sales. All countries had to produce weapons when they're NATO members. That is what this is about. Nothing else. Not about freedom, not about democracy. And now let's get to the point. This is what I want to chime in on. When you look at it, that NATO, we got 800 miles on the Russian border now. And that is a devastating response to Putin's illegal invasion. Why is that a devastating response? Mm-hmm. Why should Putin feel upset about this? It's almost like having NATO encroachment and 800 miles on the border is a provocative, threatening act because NATO is warmongering criminals.
Right.
So what they say is Putin has no right to invade Ukraine. Yeah, and the narrative that Russian national security was at risk because of NATO expansion is bullshit. But here they are bragging about it. If Russia needs NATO on their border and they are that big of a threat to have NATO on their border, Of course, Russia will feel upset when you have Western military access getting close to the border and going after ethnic Russians. But they also deny this whenever we bring up the fact that, and Dr. Cornel West had a tweet earlier today where he brings up how NATO encroachment is escalating this war. And they're like, oh my God, why are you saying that? They're just putting propaganda. But here you're just admitting it right here. You're doing it just to fuck with Putin. And I heard many public officials, many people in position of power, who openly admit that, CJ. Yeah, we want to fuck with Putin. This is a big loss for Putin. We want to expand NATO border just so it'd be a loss for Putin. So you're proving him right at the end of the day regarding the NATO threat. They don't even realize that they're proving his position right. But anyway, I'll ran enough. Let's continue. There's a lot of stuff.
Looking east, the United States has finally begun its pivot to Asia, strengthening military cooperation with Japan, the Philippines, Guam, South Korea, and Australia. The current disruption.
That's for war. That's for preparation of war. That's not extending some sort of like friendship. You are reaching out to these countries to have bases there, to have other like artillery where people that can come and refuel and get more ammunition for preparation of war. But you see how they mask it as, oh, you know, we're just buddies. We're pivoting to Asia because we're friends. We like them. That's it. And that's not at all what this is about. Go ahead.
Remember, I told you guys this article serves multiple purposes. This is the empire propaganda leg of the article. Not only meant to shame you into thinking the country is great, but also to reaffirm United States national security talking points. Why are we talking about these Asian countries? What that has to do with the state of America right now? And there was multiple articles written about how China's growing relationship with Cuba is a national security threat. So it's a national security threat to have Cuba and China have relationships. But the United States have begun to pivot to Asia? What are you talking about? Like, based on what your guys' logic is, that means the United States is escalating in China.
Australia.
Now, I'm going to continue this part.
Disruption
Listen to this part.
U.S.-China relations may have less to do with spy balloons and diplomatic missteps than with Xi Jinping's rational fear of being hemmed in by an increasingly muscular U.S. military presence surrounding the South China Sea.
CJ, when they said this part, Washington segment, my jaw dropped because I'm like, you guys just said it. And then Joe Scarborough, or his ghostwriter, literally says that Xi Jinping has a rational fear. Not irrational. They say yes, rational. Because the United States is building military bases, openly being hostile to their country. And then whenever China responds, it's, oh my God, China, you guys are out of line. And all the Western chauvinists that believe that the United States should never allow opposition. I'm talking about the Monroe Doctrine, which is dominant among military thinking, is dominant among the ruling class. They just don't say it because we know the term. So we got to change the term. We can't say Monroe Doctrine, but they believe in that shit. That's why they panicking about Chinese influence in Cuba, and also they was panicking when they wanted to overthrow Nicolas Maduro because he was friendly with Russia. It's a legitimate belief that no opposition should be able to operate in our hemisphere. Monroe Doctrine, American excellence, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, Joe Scarborough is cheering on muscular U.S. military presence in the South China Sea. And I'm asking you, Bob and Susie, Jill and Brandon, who lives in America, what the fuck are we doing in the South China Sea? And how does it relate to our interest? It doesn't. That's them purposely trying to fuck with Taiwan, if you don't know. Anyway, let's continue.
President Joe Biden's recent diplomatic overtures toward
I'm gonna just simulate. I'm gonna skim a few this year. Cause I think we played a few of this. They talking about, and this is the ridiculousness that we're trying to explain to Dr. Cornel West. I love the way that you put it. Cause they talk about childhood poverty dropping. How can you drop childhood poverty without addressing parenthood poverty? I love that point that you constantly hammer home. Oh, the household is a poverty, but the child's okay. Get the fuck out of here. How does that even make sense?
It doesn't. This is what capitalists do. They know that capitalism is not going to reach a certain segment, so they have to kind of carve out and create these sort of niches that say, this says this and that, just how they say unemployment rates means something good about the economy. Really? How can you say that when you're not even talking about the wages for those jobs? Because 14 million minimum wage jobs, That's not good. You get what I'm saying? So, but just it's like they're creating an illusion of success, and that's what cutting childhood poverty is. Go ahead.
Actually, I'll let this part play because I want to address this part. At this part, I'm sending through the part we did in the intro. But listen to this part.
While the U.S. economy continues to surge forward despite economists' dire predictions. America's GDP grew to $25 trillion last year. Texas has a bigger economy than Russia, and although California is routinely rebuked by right-wing critics, it has the fourth strongest economy in the world, stronger than Britain's, France's, Canada's, or India's. The United States and its European allies collectively run an economic machine that doubles China's stagnating output.
China's stagnating output. You guys see this, these two paragraphs here is they bragging about how powerful the American economy is. Now, you guys understand that Marxists will agree with you, right? On literally everything you just said here. But the reason why you have to write this article is that despite the fact that the American economy is powerful as fuck, people don't feel it. Like, how do you not realize this flaw in your thinking? Yeah, the American economy is so powerful, it's so strong. California, the fourth leading economy in the world, but we got Skid Row. But y'all don't got healthcare in California. So you guys know this is the Marxist critique, right? That you guys have all these resources, but you're not lifting people out of poverty? They said it doubles China's stagnating output. I don't give a fuck what China's output is, how many people they lift out of poverty. They got people in houses. They got great infrastructure, great healthcare. They got amazing public transportation. They got high-speed rail where you can get from the west of China to the far east of China, 12-hour train trip. You can just jump on that bitch, CJ, for a few $100s. But CJ, can you imagine if I could just jump on a high-speed rail and we can do Nick and CJ in 3 hours?
Yeah.
You guys realize that China is living in that future? Do you know that future world that I saw growing up watching the Jetsons? That you can jump on a high-speed train, be across the goddamn country by the end of the day. Then we can have RBN lives all the goddamn time. I mean, I'm talking about live lives. That's in China.
Yeah, in person.
You have no idea what's going on in China right now. The amazing infrastructure. I had professors that live in China. I used to talk to them all the time. Like, they're like, Americans have no idea the kind of conveniences that we have.
Because Nick, the people who are telling us that the economy is good are the capitalists, are essentially the owners. So they are picking what we use as markers to say this is successful. We would have completely different sort of thresholds and markers from a worker's point of view. The first marker would be, Nick, do we have a living wage? That is a marker of a successful economy. But if a successful economy, and I'm going to give another sports analogy, successful economy to an owner is, we got 10 players. 3 of them are making the most money out of all the players in the NBA, and everybody else is breaking nothing. But 2 of our players are making the most money. LeBron is making $100 million, and Kyrie Irving is making $75 million. That's more than everybody else. The other 12 people on the team, they're making minimum wage. But the marker is who has the most money. You get what I'm saying? And we have to understand everything we hear, everything from people. This is why people, Nick, find it so hard to understand why the United States is bad and all these things that we talk about, is that everywhere they turn, they're getting the same message. So they don't understand because the owners and capitalists own everything. They own the newspapers. They own the magazines. They own the reporters. So all those perspectives. So you're thinking like, well, New York Times said the economy's good. Joe Scarborough said the economy's good. Yeah, I'm broke and I'm struggling, but I guess everybody else is doing good, so it must be good. That is what they're trying to perpetuate on this. Go ahead.
So I'm gonna let it play for a bit. We almost done with the segment. We'll write the segment up. But this article, as I showed you guys, was absolutely ratio to oblivion on Twitter with the right, the left, just anyone who could read seeing this article. Like, dude, you're a piece of shit, right? But you want to see how they talk about this article that was completely toasted by the general populace. This is their breakdown of this article. I'm gonna play this part and then we can wrap the segment.
Your country is doing pretty damn well. And I think it's fair to say Joe Biden has led that international effort.
Well, he certainly has. I mean, this is something I was also saying during the Trump administration, during the Obama administration, during the Bush administration. I've been saying for quite some time, not on the foreign policy side, because I will say on the foreign policy side, Joe Biden has done extraordinarily well. Afghanistan, the one challenge, which I discuss also in this column, it was done. It was promised by the past three presidents to do the same thing.
So what I would call his weakest point, the commander-in-chief, his weakest point is foreign policy. Joe Scarborough saying it's good. Now, I want you guys to realize the only thing he criticized Joe Biden on is pulling out of Afghanistan. And the right meltdown about this, and this exposed the quote-unquote anti-war right, because my question to people who believe that Biden's pull out of Afghanistan was horrible is, what is their suggestion? Because based on what they want us to stay there because that war was already lost. The second the United States pulled out of Afghanistan, the Taliban taken over. So what people who criticize Biden for pulling out of Afghanistan is saying is that we don't pull out of Afghanistan until the Taliban is defeated, which means never. So Joe Scarborough is essentially saying Joe Biden's only flaw is that he did commit to a forever war with Afghanistan. Unbelievable. And not just his position, that is position of the right wing as well. Because you see right wingers criticizing more Afghanistan. The only thing that Biden don't deserve criticism on. You know what Biden deserves criticism on regarding Afghanistan? Is keeping sanctions and stealing billions of dollars of Afghanistan civilian money, which led to millions of them starving. But that's not his criticism. It's just not running a forever war. But anyway, let's continue. I'm gonna write the 7 soon.
And 70% of Americans supported Joe Biden doing that when he did it. Even 55% of Americans supported him after he did it. The purpose, though, of this column wasn't to talk about Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anybody else. It was to talk about America. John Meacham, as I was going through the 4th of July reading, it was 75% of Americans think we're going in the wrong direction.
I just want to hear from him, and then we can wrap the segment up. I just want to show you guys how crazy this guy is.
I can find another poll, though, that says 75% of Americans say their economic standing is good or excellent.
Whatever the fuck that means.
And there's this bizarre disconnect between perception and reality. I also go down so many things in this column about, for instance, Republicans now have become the new lefties, trashing, college campuses, doing everything but taking over, presidents' offices.
I'm gonna get to the way guys talk. Can we hear this part?
Well, I think one of the great disconnects that you've pointed out is between people who talk about these things publicly, people who poll on them, and then in a cycle then talk about the polling results and what people genuinely think.
By the way, and you mentioned before how John Meacham is one of the biggest propagandists that there are. You want to know how you know someone's a propagandist? Look at their damn title. This man is a presidential historian. That is a professional managerial class bullshit. So I'm a presidential historian as well, guys. You want to know my analysis of presidents? They're all fucking war criminals. There it is. That's all you need to know.
It's like saying he's a political influencer. He might as well just say that. You're a political influencer.
That's like the people who call themselves disinfo experts. Like, what the fuck does that mean?
That's not a job, man.
Well, so when you call yourself a presidential historian, are you like a leading, or do you lead the New York Times and selling books on president's life and history? Like, well, why do you give yourself that title? Like, you're here. And I'm gonna tell you what that title really means. You're here to bullshit and lie and cover up the truth of American history. I promise you, this is the kind of motherfucker he's gonna be talking about. He talked about Ronald Reagan in good graces. He talked about every single president in good graces. That is what the establishment presidential historian is here to do. Their job is to rewrite history and tell you these stories about how presidents are actually better than they actually are. That's why Noam Chomsky, he really sent a shockwave in political discourse when he said that every single president, at least since the 60s, should be tried as a war criminal. Last 11 U.S. presidents should be war criminals. And that was like, what? And then everyone was shocked. You know why? Because they're used to the presidential historians like John Meacham coming on and tell you how great Bill Clinton was. So that's the real dream. I need to start ranting because this segment going a little long, but I'll wrap up after the last part.
And my own sense is that part of the wages of having such a radically polarized political class, which is to say those who have an economic, cultural, and often ideological stake in an unfolding political drama, because of that polarization, it's not in anyone's interest to say what you just said. Because what's interesting about, hey, everything's good. Yeah, there are problems. We should work on it. That's not going to get people.
There are problems, and we should work on it. That's how he described 2 out of 3 Americans living paycheck to paycheck. That's how you describe millions homeless. That's how you describe at least 70,000 Americans dying each year because they don't have health care. Always got problems to work on.
That's always the point of view, but that's always the point of view. It's that George Floyd can't, but yeah, everything's okay. It's just we got we got a little things to work on, because it's always from the point of view who their lives are good. So to them, a few million homeless, we're still good, because I look at my 401k, look at Wall Street. So something's going good, and that's the perspective. And this is why we always preach against the professional managerial class, because some of that creeps into the left too, and they're just doing things for their class. But go ahead, I'm going off on the tangent.
Yeah, we can wrap that segment though. We got 2 super chats I can read real quick.
Go ahead.
Now I'm gonna cover our next story. Can be covering AOC.
Good Lord,
endorsing Jim Crow Joe. So we gonna watch the video on Pod Save America regarding that. It's only 1 minute clip. It's really hard to watch more than 1 minute of the AOC. But,
yes.
Thank you for $5. ARJ 1997. Bourgeoisie America is doing just fine. Joe Capitalist Scarborough. And I want to see if I can find the tweet again. The tweet is extremely interesting. It kind of show how unserious the right is, because you see a lot of these comments, and once again, my algorithm is based, so so I always see the good left comments, but I scroll, I'll see like right-wing comments every once in a while. I wonder if I can find some here, because when you look at my based ass audience, all of them are like, that's me saying state media propaganda garbage. Look, all the people my mutual who I follow, they point out the fact that people are fucking struggling here. People are fucking struggling. And then there's right wingers that pretending that Joe Scarborough is like some sort of socialist in the comments as well. But this is the one this is what getting the most likes. So I was doing on top of my head. What's 20? 5 days a week for that.
That's 20 working days in a month. And how much does he make?
500K divided by
20.
500,000 divided by 20. I'm just trying to figure out how much you make per episode. It's 25. So around 25. 20. And by the way, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski do not work 20 days a week. Like they just came on vacation. They only have sub days. So assuming they working this schedule, they're making around $25,000 a year, right? I mean, $25,000 a day, not a year. $25,000 per day, and that would mean people on the level point out. And this is the guy that's here to tell you that everything is going okay, as well. Like this guy, this person had the same.
I don't think I've seen that tweet until this episode. So they get destroyed in there. Is that Joe Scarborough? I'm gonna go look at it. Is that Joe Scarborough himself?
Yeah, he tweeted it out as well. He tweeted because he thought his article was a banger, so he tweeted out 1.6 million views. So a lot of people saw it. Rachel to death. Rachel to death. I'm trying to see if I can find here. Look, here it is. This guy said, "Sounds like communist propaganda." Now, they're not a lot of analytical value. I just find it fucking hilarious how right-wingers absolutely cannot diagnose the problem. They think the problem is that Joe Scarborough is some sort of fucking communist. And that's why he's telling poor people to be okay with their wages being stolen. Absolutely. So anyway, I find that funny. This is the one I did see. If you scroll out more, there are a ton of right-wingers roasting him, pretending he's a socialist or whatever. Anyway, it's just funny.
I'm looking through the responses right now. The thing is, all it takes, Nick, is for one ruling class member to be like, that was a banger ass article, and he's gonna forget all the people in the comments who are saying any of that stuff. They really don't care if they don't view you as equal, or if they view you as below, and you have an opinion. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, well,
especially if you see through their shit. If you see through their shit, they view you as like a number. Like, oh, they see through my shit. They're not part of my reachable audience. Fuck them. You don't give a fuck that he's being Rachel. He glad that he got praised.
But who is he gonna reach with this? Who like, because I'm trying to think, a person who's actually struggling, could they be convinced? Or is it just people that's kind of like on the lower end, not quite struggling, but right at the edge? You get what I'm saying? Go ahead.
This article is also a way to teach propagandists on how to talk about this country right now. If you go buy and run for re-election. And remember, the kind of people that read the Atlantic, like I'm talking about, like seriously, like they think again, real news, are the petite bourgeoisie and the ruling class. So they read this article and they're like, oh yeah, it helps them feel better about the ill-gotten means. So it serves so many different purposes. That's why they got audience in general. That's why they got advertisers. That's why they make the big bucks, because they make the professional managerial class, the bourgeoisie, feel comfortable, which why they can rely on their subscriptions, right? But thank for $5 is ARJ again. Ronald Reagan in the 1970s said that socialism in the United States would deny you the ability to own a yacht. I prefer Medicare for all, housing, retirement instead. Absolutely. I want my neighbors to have, like, why fucking who needs a fucking boat? Nigga, I'd rather my neighbors to have health care, rather people have housing. I'd rather be able to retire, right? Anyway, and that what people that's the bad faith capitalist criticism that I never understand. I would never understand. Like, you have people say, "Oh man, you're doing okay." I used to sell cars. I used to do okay selling cars. I told you guys before. I made more money selling cars than ever doing this. So people are like, oh my God, you making all this money? You got a house. You doing okay, Nick? Why are you so mad at capitalism? Because I want my neighbor to be okay. Why do I gotta sell 15 to 20 cars a month in order to pay my fucking bills and feed myself? Someone should not have to sell 15 cars to fucking make a living. Someone shouldn't have to have a YouTube channel to fucking make a living. You should be able to be like, I want to be a laborer. I want to contribute to our society via manual labor, via feeding people, whether you can work in fast food. Any way you can contribute to society, you should be taken care of at that point. And even if you are doing well, even if I'm doing well, that's completely irrelevant, because I want everyone to do well, and I want everyone to have talent and abilities in order to accomplish that.
But are you really doing well?
Go ahead, CJ.
Are you really doing well if you're having to work 70 hours in order to make, you get what I'm saying? Like, you're trading your whole life away to work. You're trading your whole life away. So yeah, I'm a professional managerial class. I'm working 70 hours. I'm making 200K. Is that living when you're seeing other people, workers, more than your own family? And I mean, there's so many people that's in that state right now, where you literally go to work. You're at work 8-10 hours. You're at home 5 hours. You're at home where you're conscious and not sleeping. You're at home 5 hours, and that's our normal. And too many people think that's how it's supposed to be.
That's a great point, CJ. Because even when I was doing well, when I was selling cars, I was working 65, 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
You know how much hour it takes to sell 20 cars, guys? I was selling 20 cars a month. That shit takes a ton of fucking time.
Yeah, you gotta be out there a long time.
It's unbelievable amount of work. So even when I have money, I'm like, nigga, I'm not even hanging out with my friends. I had no life from like 23 to like 28. I had no life. I was just fucking selling cars, and I got maybe 5 holidays a year. So I do not miss those days at all. And this is a great comment by Lana. And this is why I quit my job. I don't want to go back selling cars. Because even when I was doing better, I'm like, this manager is stealing my labor value. Like, it took me selling. You gotta make 10. You gotta sell 10 to 50 cars just to make a living wage. Then once you sell 15 plus, then you start getting to the money. Meanwhile, managers, right? They got BMWs. Fucking, they buy new houses. I'm like, nigga, I'm tired of you motherfuckers getting rich on my labor. I don't give a fuck. Like, and it was so obvious. And I told this story before, but there was a manager I actually like. He's another black guy, and he actually let it slip to me like, man, things are really fucked up now, man. I remember back in the day when I used to sell 10 cars, you used to make $100,000 grand a year selling cars. And I'm looking at him like, So y'all stealing our money then. So I should be. He kind of realized he shouldn't have said that to me because we were friends. So he was getting too comfortable. He was getting too comfortable with me. He was like, man, back in my day, if you sold 10 cars, you make $100,000 a year. So y'all stealing my labor value then. And there were a lot of old school car salesmen people that said, man, the whole game changed. You still make a lot of money doing this business. Then the managerial class came and said, no, we need more profits. And they started taking for salesmen. That's why most salesmen quit, because they're not making a living wage. Because $80 million, we getting 2%, 5% on a car deal.